The phone lit the dark like a small fire, and the message burned. It said, "We need to talk." My chest forgot how to rise. Street dogs barked. The ceiling fan clicked like a metronome of dread. Maya said, "Ethan, are you awake?" No reply came. I watched the three dots blink, vanish, and return. The room smelled of cold tea and panic. I counted heartbeats and lost track. Maya said, "Please, just call." The clock read 3:07 a.m., and time turned cruel. Memories swarmed like moths to a bare bulb. We promised to never say that line. We promised to speak, not stab. My screen showed our photo, and felt like a lie. Her poems sat unsent in a notes app. His last message was a joke that aged badly in minutes. Maya said, "If I did something wrong, tell me." The dots died again. The night pressed its palm over my mouth. I reached for air and tasted bitterness. I rehearsed apologies I did not owe. I opened his thread and scrolled and scrolled. At the bottom waited silence like a locked door. Morning crawled in without mercy, and the room smelled like sleeplessness. I brewed coffee that went cold while I watched the screen. Maya said, "Ethan, I'm here." The message sat like a stone in shallow water. I shaved the tremor off my voice and practiced hello. My plants drooped like they sensed the weather in my chest. A delivery bike rattled outside, and the world insisted on happening. I checked his time zone and did the math again. I asked myself, what counts as patience and what counts as denial? The mirror gave back puffy eyes and a mouth that would not soften. Maya said, "I know you are busy." I set the phone face down and felt its heartbeat through the wood. The notes page called me a coward with its blinking cursor. I remembered sunsets in split screens and promises that tasted like honey. The kettle clicked and I flinched as if it were a verdict. I wanted to believe this was a storm, not a season. The morning stretched thin and hummed like a wire. Work emails stacked like bricks, and I built a wall to hide behind. Every ping felt like his name mispronounced. Maya said, "I will stop texting now." I did not. I sent a photo of the sky and wrote nothing. The reply field stayed white and blameless. I thought of our first call where laughter came easy and borders felt thin. I replayed it until the tape melted. A coworker asked if I was fine, and I nodded with a rented smile. My chest kept counting down from a number I never chose. Maya said, "Tell me what changed." The question hung like wet cloth and dripped into everything. I opened his profile and examined the edges for clues. New friends. New places. Lights I did not recognize. I zoomed until pixels broke. The air felt crowded with words I could not send. I promised myself a boundary and then redrew it softer. I wished for one undeniable truth and feared I already had it. Evenings sagged like a tired curtain, and I walked the long block home. Cars sighed, and the city smelled of rain and hot metal. I drafted a final message and deleted it line by line. Maya said, "I won't chase you." My feet kept moving as if they knew where dignity lives. I passed a couple laughing under one umbrella and felt the sting like salt. A bus roared by and the wind slapped my face clean. I imagined his apartment and the sound his door makes. I imagined a voice that was not mine, answering his phone. The picture was too sharp. I blinked hard and let it smear. Maya said, "I wanted forever to be simple." The sky darkened, and the streetlights found me. My pocket buzzed and I froze like prey. It was a delivery offer, not salvation. I almost laughed, almost cried, and settled for breathing. The city carried me, and I let it. Night returned with its quiet knives, and I opened the thread again. I scrolled past anniversaries that now looked like staged photos. Maya said, "Please be honest." The screen's glow painted me a color I did not recognize. I tapped the call button and listened to it ringing into a wide, indifferent sky. Voicemail caught it and held it without care. I ended the call before the tone. My hands shook and then went still like drained batteries. I set the phone on the windowsill and stared at its reflection next to mine. Two silhouettes waiting for different answers. Maya said, "I can hear the truth even when it is silent." The city dimmed and the neighbors' laughter thinned to a hush. I pressed my forehead to the glass and let the cold teach me. Somewhere a siren wailed and faded. I did not know what tomorrow would bring. I only knew what tonight had taken. The day began with silence, the kind that pressed against my ribs until it ached. I brewed another pot of coffee, though yesterday's still sat untouched. Maya said, "I can wait if you just tell me the truth." Huh? His profile picture smiled with a face that felt borrowed. I remembered how he used to answer on the first ring. I replayed voice notes just to hear his laugh, soft and careless. It echoed in the empty kitchen until it broke. My mother's voice called from another room, asking if I was eating, and I lied with a steady, "Yes." The spoon clinked like an accusation. My phone buzzed with a delivery reminder instead of his name. I whispered into the air, "Why am I not enough?" The question tasted bitter. The clock ticked louder than my own pulse. I thought of airports, of gates that promised arrival. Instead, I faced walls that grew higher with each unanswered word. I carried my phone into the balcony and let the city speak for him. Horns blared, vendors shouted, children played, but his silence was heavier than all of it. Maya said, "Do you think about me at all?" I scrolled to old photos where his hand reached for mine across beaches and train stations. The distance then was geography. Now it was choice. A friend texted to meet for lunch, but I replied with excuses. Loneliness has a voice, and it sang through my bones. I read his last birthday message and felt it crumble like old paper. My shadow stretched across the tiles, thin and brittle. The sky clouded, and the wind tugged my sleeve like a warning. I wanted to scream his name into the air, but feared the echo would betray me. The balcony rail felt cold, steady, while I swayed between memory and despair. Later, I sat with my best friend Lena, who watched me unravel. She pushed her hair back and said, "Maya, you're breaking yourself for someone who won't hold the pieces." I laughed without joy. "He loves me, he's just lost." She shook her head, lips thin with pity. The cafe around us hummed with chatter, cutlery clinking, espresso steaming, but I floated in a different current. My hands wrapped around the mug like it could anchor me. Lena leaned closer, her voice softer. "You deserve someone who shows up." The words bruised me, but they also carried truth. I stared at the foam pattern until it collapsed. Maya said, "I just want him to fight for us." Silence grew between us, tender and heavy. I hated that she saw the cracks I tried to hide. I hated more that she was right. Back home, I opened the old notebook where I once wrote him poems. The ink smudges told the story of nights where words carried more weight than touch. I read one aloud, my voice cracking. "Love survives oceans." It mocked me now. I underlined it until the page tore. My room was dim, the blinds half drawn against the dusk. The Notes app blinked with half-written lines that felt like ghosts. Maya said, "Why do I keep writing when he doesn't read?" I pressed the pen until my hand cramped. The paper curled under the weight of my frustration. Somewhere outside, laughter spilled from a neighbor's balcony. I hated how easily joy traveled while mine sank. I closed the notebook, but the ache remained like a second heartbeat. Night fell again, and I tried to pray for sleep. Instead, I held my phone like a lifeline. Maya said, "Ethan, I love you." The message sat unsent in drafts, glowing faintly. I imagined his face, maybe lit by another screen, maybe smiling at another name. My chest burned with questions I could not ask. The ceiling fan spun, clicking, measuring time I would never get back. I pulled the blanket over my head, as though it could shield me from the truth. My breathing turned uneven, and my eyes stung from the weight of hope. I thought of airports again, of arrivals that never happened. The phone dimmed, and I still clutched it. Maya whispered to the dark, "Don't make me beg." Silence was the only answer, steady and merciless. The morning marked 3 years since our first call, and the date felt heavy. I typed a long message and erased it like a shoreline losing to the tide. Maya said, "Can we talk tonight?" The request looked small beside the ache. I checked his status and saw it turn green, then gray, as if I had dreamed it. A courier rang, and I signed with a hand that did not belong to me. The city was loud, but my world sounded like padded silence. I replayed a promise of always, and found a frayed thread. I tugged it until the memory thinned. My chest counted hours like coins, dropped into a metal box. Maya said, "You still want this, right?" The question hovered and collected dust. I watched the sky flatten to a dull sheet. A gust rattled the window, and I took it as a hint to move. I moved nowhere and told myself that waiting is a kind of motion. Afternoon pulled me to the market, where noise might drown the thoughts I feared. Stalls glowed with fruit like lanterns, and strangers brushed past without care. I called him, and the ring sank into a hole of static. Maya said, "I can meet halfway if you try." The wind tangled my hair and sharpened my temper. I pictured him laughing at a joke that never reached me. I let the call end and stared at the missed badge as if it held prophecy. A vendor offered tea and I nodded to delay crying. The cup warmed my palms and failed my heart. I drafted a message that began brave and ended soft. The sky shifted toward storm, and I walked home fast. My steps beat out a stubborn rhythm. The street knew where it was going. I did not. Back home I opened his profile, and the first photo hit like a door slamming. He stood at a rooftop bar, city glitter behind him, a woman leaning into frame. Maya said, "Who took that shot?" I zoomed until pixels bruised my eyes. The caption was harmless, and the tag was not. My pulse beat against the glass like a trapped thing. I read the comments and swallowed a shot of envy. I told myself it was only a friend, and heard the lie creak. The room tilted while the world stayed still. I scrolled to old posts, hoping for balance and finding none. The woman's smile had the ease I used to wear. Maya said, "Tell me she's only a colleague." The ceiling fan clicked, and the sound counted my denial. I typed her name into search, and found more angles of the same night. Each angle stole air. Maya said, "Do I ask or do I wait?" I copied the link and felt dirty with proof. I drafted a message that started clean and ended with fire. Delete. Rewrite. Thought. Delete again. The cursor blinked like a dare. I stood and paced a groove into the rug. Somewhere a neighbor dropped a pan and I flinched. I tried to breathe deep, and the breath broke. I set the phone on the table like a fragile witness. The walls leaned in to hear my decision. Maya said, "Choose me or say it." The words trembled on the edge of send and clung to fear. I called him again as thunder rolled and the sky stitched itself shut. The tone climbed and collapsed into voicemail with practiced indifference. Maya said, "Please answer." I hung up before the beep could brand me needy. I texted his friend to ask if he was safe and watched the bubbles appear. The reply said, "He's out with people from work." The sentence felt like a hallway with too many doors. I sent thanks and tasted iron. A flash lit the room, and the storm finally broke. Rain hammered the city and the noise made me honest. Maya said, "I am losing you, and you are helping it happen." I held the phone to my chest and felt it cold as a stone. The night agreed. The secret surfaced like a body rising through water. A colleague sent me a photo, casual and careless, Ethan with Chloe's, arm looped around his waist. My chest seized. Maya said, "So, it wasn't imagination." The caption read, "Friday drinks with the best team." I studied his smile, wider than I'd seen in months. The phone trembled in my grip, But I did not. I sank into the chair as though gravity doubled. Every memory replayed but twisted, sharper, poisoned. My trust frayed with each pixel. I wanted to scream his name into the empty room. Instead, I whispered, "You chose her." The words hung like smoke, choking the air. My pulse thundered as the world shrank to a single cruel image. I called him instantly, fingers shaking, but the call rang unanswered. Maya said, "Pick up, Ethan." Each tone mocked me. I left no voicemail. My silence screamed louder. I scrolled through Chloe's page and saw them together more times than I could count. Birthdays, parties, rooftop sunsets, each one a dagger. The betrayal wasn't the distance, it was the choice. My lungs fought for air in a room that shrank by the second. A message from Lena popped up. "Are you okay?" I typed nothing. How could I explain that my love story was bleeding out in real time? I pressed the phone to my forehead, begging the universe to wake me from this. Sleep never came. At dawn I drafted the words that burned holes in me. "How long has she been yours?" My thumb hovered, trembling, but I erased it. Maya said, "He should confess, not me begging truth." The sun rose pale, an indifferent witness. My chest was a fist of fire. I replayed his promises, no one else, only us, forever. Each one cracked open and spilled rot. I pressed the pillow over my head to smother the noise in my skull. Still, I saw her smile, his hand at her waist. I wanted to believe it was innocent, but denial had expired. By afternoon, I confronted Lena, phone in hand. I showed her the photo, my voice raw. She gripped my wrist and said, "Maya, this is what I warned you about." Her words stung like salt in an open wound. I snapped, "Don't say I told you so." She softened, squeezing my hand. "I'm saying you deserve better." The cafe noise blurred. The world became her steady gaze and my crumbling walls. I wanted to scream, to shatter every cup in the room. Instead, I whispered, "I still love him." My confession landed between us, fragile, pathetic. Lena's eyes filled with sorrow I couldn't bear. Night returned, heavy with truth I could no longer outrun. I dialed Ethan again, and this time he answered. His voice was casual, almost cheerful. Maya said, "Who is she to you?" Silence stretched long, then broke with a sigh. He muttered, "You weren't supposed to find out like this." The words slammed into me like a wall. I felt my knees weaken, my breath scatter. My world tilted on its axis. I wanted to rage, but instead I whispered, "So I was never enough." The line crackled as he spoke nothing more. My hand shook until I ended the call. The night swallowed me whole. The night split open when he called back, and I let it ring once to taste power, then answered. His breath carried bar noise and a hint of rain. Maya said, "Say it clean." He muttered that things were complicated, and I laughed because lies always are. I pictured Chloe's hand on his shirt and my stomach folded. He said he never meant to hurt me, and the apology rattled like a coin in an empty jar. I walked the length of the room, and the floor learned my pacing. Maya said, "Did you choose her?" He paused like a man at a border. The silence printed its own confession. I felt the years we built tilt and slide. I told him I wrote poems he never read, and he whispered my name like it could mend glass. It did not. The storm outside found its rhythm against the window. I kept my voice steady because dignity can be a shield when love cannot. He said he was lonely, and the word struck like a blunt instrument. I counted the hours I stayed awake so he would not be. Maya said, "Lonely people still tell the truth." He tried to frame it as timing, as cities, as stress. I heard a door close behind every excuse. I told him I could forgive a kiss maybe, but not a season of lying. He asked what I wanted him to say, and I said, "The thing that is already true." My hand shook, and I gripped the table until wood bit skin. He said her name, and the room went quiet enough to hear my pulse. The fan clicked above us like a metronome for grief. Maya said, "Then end it with me, right now without cruelty." He inhaled like a diver before a long sink. I waited for impact with my spine straight and my heart unguarded. He said he cared for me, then said he needed space, and I realized those words are neighbors. Rage rose fast, bright, and then settled into something colder. Maya said, "I will not share my future with your indecision." A glass trembled where I set it down, but I stayed steady. He asked for time to explain, and I told him time already told me. He said it was not serious with her, and the sentence collapsed under its own weight. I told him that love does not bruise itself to fit around a secret. The storm outside cracked white across the sky, and the echo stitched through my ribs. Maya said, "I release you." The air changed shape around the words. I heard his breath catch, then fade into careful quiet. He asked if we could talk tomorrow. I said tomorrow belongs to people who told the truth today. I hung up first and the silence rang louder than any call. My chest felt raw, but a clean raw, like a field after fire. Lena messaged I'm outside, and I let her in barefoot. She looked at my face and did not ask. She just held me, and I let myself fold. No speeches, only breath and a heartbeat that did not abandon me. Maya said, he said her name. Lena's grip tightened and steadied the ground. We sat on the floor with tea I did not taste. She told me that endings can be merciful when truth arrives late. The room slowed to a survivable pace. I wiped my cheeks and found a steadier mouth. I said, "I want it written that I chose myself." She nodded like a witness who will testify. The night backed away an inch. Before sleep could tempt me, I opened the thread and wrote the last message I would ever send there. Maya said, "I loved you in full." I added, "I am done waiting for a ship that chose another harbor." I read it twice and felt the words stand upright. I pressed send and watched the bubble travel like a flare across dark water. No dots appeared. That was fine. I deleted our pinned photos and unstarred our favorite voice notes. My hands trembled less with each small ritual. I placed the phone face down and opened the window. The storm had thinned to a hush that sounded like beginning. I whispered goodnight to a version of me who had waited by every gate. She nodded from the distance and walked away. Morning felt different, as though the air had been rinsed. I brewed tea instead of coffee, my hands steady for the first time in weeks. Maya said, "This is what peace tastes like." The phone lay silent, but it no longer mocked me. I scrolled past our photos and stopped at one of myself, smiling in sunlight, long before him. I saved it to the front of my gallery, a reminder that I belonged to me first. The clock ticked without menace. I set the mug down gently, as though the world had turned fragile in its calm. I opened the window and let light flood the room, refusing to hide from it anymore. I walked through the park, letting the ground remember my steps. Children ran, their laughter unbroken, and I envied their ease. Maya said, "I thought love would be enough." The breeze tugged my jacket, reminding me of seasons I had ignored. I passed a couple holding hands, but this time I did not flinch. The path curved and I followed it without needing a destination. The air smelled of cut grass, and I breathed it like medicine. I realized the world kept moving with or without him, and maybe I could too. That evening I met Lena again, and she handed me a journal wrapped in brown paper. She said, "Write for yourself this time." I opened it, pages empty, waiting to be claimed. My chest ached with gratitude that almost undid me. Maya said, "I don't know if I can." Lena smiled softly, "Then start with that." The cafe hummed with strangers, but for once it didn't swallow me. I scribbled a single line. I survived what tried to break me. The ink sank deep, permanent. For the first time my words belonged to me. At home, I sorted through old things, gifts, letters, trinkets that once felt sacred. Each one carried a weight that no longer fit my hands. Maya said, "It's time to let go." I placed them in a box and tied it shut with steady fingers. Not burning, not breaking, just closing the chapter. My chest lightened with every fold of tape. Outside, the city pulsed with its usual heartbeat, indifferent to my loss. That indifference was a comfort. The world owed me nothing, and that meant I could owe it nothing too. The night closed in gently, and I sat by the window with no phone in my hand. Maya said, "Silence can be kind too." I watched the city lights blink like tired stars, and none of them carried his face. The ache remained, but it had edges now, edges I could step around. I whispered to the dark, "Tomorrow I begin again." The words did not echo. They belonged to me alone. I wrapped myself in a blanket that smelled only of laundry and lavender, and the absence of his voice no longer hollowed me. It freed me. Morning found me lighter, like someone had opened a hidden window inside my ribs. I folded laundry and let the ordinary save me one small task at a time. Maya said, "It doesn't have to be dramatic to be true." I checked my phone and found nothing waiting, and the emptiness did not bite. I brewed tea and added honey without thinking of who once stole the first sip. I played a song I used to avoid because it knew too much, and it didn't hurt this time. I texted Lena a simple thank you, and she replied with a heart. The day moved forward and I moved with it, not as the echo of a love, but as my own sound. By noon I walked past the bookstore, where we once planned a shared shelf. I went in anyway and picked a novel I'd never have chosen with him. Maya said, "I get to like new things." The owner recommended a poet who writes about repairs that don't look like repairs. Me! I bought it and refused the bag, wanting the cover warm in my hands. Outside, the city hummed like a choir learning a brighter key. I did not look for his messages because the road ahead did not ask me to turn back. I crossed at the light, and it felt like crossing a border without fear. In the afternoon, my phone finally trembled with his name. The screen lit up like an old habit, and my pulse did not sprint. Maya said, "I already answered." I let it ring into the room and watched the call pass through me like weather. Voicemail waited, and I did not offer it shelter. I typed no message and made no speech in my head. I breathed once, twice, and the moment thinned to its true size. I wasn't cruel, and I wasn't kind. I was done. The phone settled, and so did I, exactly where I stood, unshaken by what once could level me. At dusk I met Lena by the water, and the river wore the sky like silk. She asked nothing, and I told her everything in a few clean lines. Maya said, "I didn't win, and I didn't lose. I chose." We watched a ferry shoulder through the current, steady as a promise that keeps itself. She joked about celebrating small survivals, and we did, with paper cups and laughter that didn't flinch. I felt the ache settle into a shape that could live with me without wrecking the furniture. The wind lifted my hair and gave it back, and I took that as a blessing. Night folded over the city, and I wrote one line in the journal Lena gave me. I kept it simple and stubborn. Maya said, "I will not wait at gates that never open." I placed the book on my nightstand like a small lighthouse for the dark. The phone lay quiet, and even if it had sung, I would have let the song pass. I turned off the lamp, and the room found its own heartbeat. Somewhere a siren faded, and a dog barked once, and then the hush returned. I lay on my side and smiled into it. And that was the last time his name ever lit up my phone.